In a library draped in dust, heavy with the scent of old ink, the man sat alone, as was his habit, surrounded by idols made of paper and words. He was not reading. He was listening, listening to a voice only he could hear, a voice rising not from the surface of things, but from their depths, from that latent will behind every motion and every silence, that volcanic force in which Schopenhauer had glimpsed the beating heart of the world. But the man sitting there now was not Schopenhauer. He was his disciple, or so it began. He was Nietzsche. He came to him as a son comes to his father, bearing the inheritance in one hand while the other already gripped an axe whose hour had not yet come. He studied that cosmic will Schopenhauer had taught him and grasped that the visible world, this world we touch, we hear, we suffer in, was nothing but a stage whose strings were pulled by a blind, merciless force. But Nietzsche would not settle for being merely an echo of another man's voice. He began to see what his teacher had not, that the problem lay not in the will itself, but in what men had done with it, what the West had done with it, what man had done the moment he chose to chain his own power rather than unleash it. Nietzsche did not write in the calm cadence of academics. He wrote in flashes, thoughts like lightning illuminating for an instant, only to leave you in a darkness deeper than the one you had known. His writings were less essays than screams, as though he knew that what he had to say could not be digested in his own lifetime. That time alone would be his true reader. Nietzsche saw that the whole of Western culture was built upon a great lie, a lie dressed in the robes of holiness that had slipped into hearts through the door of mercy. That lie was the morality of resentment, a morality born from the womb of weakness, from the belly of those unable to seize what they wanted, who named their own impotence virtue, and called the strength of others evil. And always he pointed to one source. He pointed to the church. His hostility toward Christianity was not the shallow defiance of a rebel. It ran far deeper than that. In every system that dictates to man what he must and must not do, in every ideology that rules in the name of the good, he saw a prison in which man chooses of his own free will to bind his hands, shutter his mind, and smother the fire burning within him. Here some stopped and said, "Then he is the father of Nazism." And here, precisely here, lies one of the ugliest paradoxes in the history of human thought. Because Nietzsche, this man who wrote in lightning, was calling no one to hatred. He was calling man to overcome himself so that from the midst of his own weakness a higher, more towering being might be born. But just as any fire can be made to warm or to burn, his ideas could be read by darkened eyes and forged into a weapon in the hands of those who did not understand, or who chose not to. And so they plucked from his words whatever served them, the way a thief chooses the orchard's finest fruit and leaves the tree torn out at the root. Nietzsche believed something that seems simple on its surface, yet demolishes everything down to its roots. Thought comes from the body, not from the soul, not from some abstract mind soaring above matter. From the body, from this bloodied, muscled entity pulsing with life, pain, and desire. You thought you were thinking, no, it is your body that thinks, and you are merely a voice announcing what flesh and nerve decided before you ever knew it. This was his natural philosophy, call it his biological philosophy, and it is a philosophy without mercy, because it means that the man of feeble body can produce nothing but the morality of the feeble, and the morality of the feeble can birth nothing but the thought of the feeble. The chain is cruel and airtight. Physiology determines morality, and morality determines thought. No escape, no exception, no miracle to overturn the equation. And so, instead of sitting down to analyze ideas from within, as philosophers do when they weigh ideas against each other, Nietzsche did something entirely different. He asked an unbearable question. Who produced this morality? Who forged it? And what lived in his body, in his weakness, at the moment he forged it? This is what he called the genealogy of morals, not a critique of ideas, but a tracing of their origins down to the root, down to the first moment they were born from the womb of a particular man in particular circumstances in a particular body. And when he applied this method to Western morality, he found what no one wished to see. He found a single thread running from Athens to Rome, from Plato to Christianity. One unbroken thread, despite all the distance and all the centuries that seemed to separate them. Plato, that great Greek son of the 5th century before Christ, child of Olympus and its many gods, had planted the first seed. He planted it when he split the world in two. A world we live through our senses, and a world dwelling above it, a world of pure abstract, forms the complete truth, reachable only by reason. Everything your eyes see is nothing but a poor shadow of something higher, purer, more lasting. The beauty you touch is only a faint reflection of beauty itself. The truth you live is only a broken copy of truth itself. Then came Christianity, and did nothing but dress this Platonic garment in religious robes. Earth became a way station, and the hereafter the only reality. The body became a prison, the soul, the true essence. What you desire here is sin. What awaits you? There is salvation. The same duality, the same rupture between the two worlds, the same contempt for everything material, sensory, and alive. Nietzsche saw this and said, "Here is the great crime. Here was born the man who hates his own life and postpones himself until after death. Here was born the man who names his inability to feel joy, piety, and calls his fear of the body virtue." It was here that Nietzsche stood before the great mirror of Western civilization and saw in it a sickened face, not sick with sin as the church would have it, sick with something far more dangerous, sick with nothingness. This is what he called nihilism, from the Latin nihil, nothing. And here lies the great paradox Nietzsche uncovered, that the civilization which claims to strive toward salvation, toward light, toward the absolute, is in truth a civilization that worships the void. For every thought that rejects this world, rejects its flesh and its dust, its joy and its pain, and postpones truth to there, to after, to above, is a thought that whispers in secret. This life is not worth having. The earth, the kingdom of the devil. The body, the source of sin. Earthly joy, a trap and a snare. And the truth, Plato's pure truth. The heavenly kingdom of God does not dwell here, but in a place you will never reach until you rid yourself of what you are. Nietzsche saw in this a declaration of war against life itself. And he asked who invented this war, who drew this map that consigns the visible world to the province of evil. The answer was shocking in its simplicity: the weak who cannot manage joy, and so name joy a vice, who cannot manage strength, and so name strength injustice, who are crushed by life, and so dream of another world where life will take its revenge on their behalf. These are the ones who invented good and evil, invented this duality that splits the world and condemns half of it, not because God handed it down, but because their weakness required it. This is the morality of resentment, a morality that springs not from strength, but from a wound, a morality that says to the strong, "Your strength is a sin," to joy, "Your joy is a guilt," to life at its most radiant, "You are the great mistake." Nietzsche's philosophy was the radical opposite of all this. It was a philosophy of dwelling in this world, in this moment, in this body. There is no there is no above, there is no outside to truth. Truth is what exists now here in all its weight, its pain, its predatory beauty. And at the heart of this philosophy beat an idea that nearly everyone misunderstood: the will to power. No, not a tyrant's hunger to dominate, not a conqueror's dream of conquest. Nietzsche's will to power is something deeper and at once more unsettling. It is the primal energy that drives life from within. That fire every living thing carries in its depths without a name for it, a fire that does not wish to rule over others, but wishes to be to the utmost of what it is capable of being, not power over others, power that triumphs over the weakness within the self. And it is this precise distinction that was lost in careless translations and in interpretations steeped in darkness. For Nietzsche, power is not defined by what it crushes, but by what it produces. Consider a child growing. No one says he grows because he wants to take another's place or to prove his superiority over those smaller than him. The child grows because the life within him wants to grow, because something inside him refuses to remain as it is, driving him forward with a force that has no name. This is the essence of the will to power, not domination over another, but life's ascending self-revelation in its most radiant form. And when a man strives toward power, he is not in truth striving toward something outside himself. Rather, life itself is striving through him, expressing itself with whatever energy it has been given. Power is not what man takes from the world, but what the world gives to man when man rises to meet its gift. From here comes Nietzsche's shocking definition of selfishness. Yes, the will to power is selfish, but it is a selfishness that does not concern itself with the other even enough to exploit him. The truly strong man does not see the weak man clearly enough to dominate him, because to be preoccupied with subduing the weak is to admit that he has an existence worth attending to. And the truly strong man is absorbed in something far greater than that, absorbed in his own growth, like the logic of a tree-splitting rock. It does not hate the rock, it declares no war upon it, it simply grows, and whatever cannot make room for its growth becomes the past. Power grows or it dies, it advances or it rots. There is no room for stillness in Nietzsche's philosophy, because stillness is death wearing a mask, and because this is the essence of it. Every value system that shackles this growth, every discourse that names strength a sin, every religion that names bodily joy a delusion, every philosophy that names ambition vanity, is in Nietzsche's eyes nothing but a weapon in the hands of those who could not grow, forged to stop those who could. And here Nietzsche declared what no one before him had dared say with such wounding clarity: all values must be rewritten from the beginning, not amended, not reformed, but torn down to their foundation and new values built in their place. Values that honor life instead of condemning it, that celebrate strength instead of criminalizing it, and that say to man, you are not sinful by nature, you are unfinished. And that is something entirely different. From these new values is born what Nietzsche called the Übermensch, the overman. Not a man of another species, neither angel nor beast, but a man freed from the prison of dualities, freed from good and evil, from here and there, from the condemned body and the sanctified soul. A man who has grasped that this one life he possesses is not an obstacle on the road to some other life, but is life entire. For whoever flees this world in search of a better one proves, in Nietzsche's eyes, only one thing: that he was never equal to this world. And his incapacity does not change the world, it only changes the name given to his incapacity. In the end, Nietzsche was not talking about philosophy, he was talking about fear. Because every duality man ever invented, good and evil, truth and falsehood, sacred and profane, was at its core. Nothing but a wall built by the frightened to shield themselves from something they could not face. Fear breeds resentment. Resentment breeds guilt. And guilt breeds that entire system which takes life at its most radiant strength, body desire, growth, and calls it sin. This is the essence of what Nietzsche called the morality of weakness. A morality that does not look inward but outward, preoccupying itself with judging the other because it has failed to build the self. And whoever judges others endlessly proves only one thing, that he no longer possesses enough life of his own to occupy him. By contrast, the morality of the strong is the morality of one who does not see the weak clearly enough to judge them. The strong man does not reject weakness, does not despise it, does not declare war on it. He simply goes his way, and life flows through him the way a river flows through rocks, not out of hatred for the rocks, but because flowing is the nature of water. And when the weak find themselves caught in the path of that current, whatever they suffer, not because the strong willed it, but because power, when it reveals itself, does not stop to ask who stands in its way. Here one can glimpse a Freudian shadow in the depths of this idea, for what Freud would come to call the libido, that primal sexual energy which denied its natural course, transforms sublimates and goes on to build civilizations and create art, is at its root. The very thing Nietzsche saw in the will to power a primordial energy coursing through the living being, driving it toward creation, transcendence, and growth. The body is the origin. Thought is not its master, but its extension. And here Nietzsche was harsher toward truth than any philosopher before him. He opened his short book on truth and lies in a non-moral sense, and wrote in that language more akin to lightning than to ink a passage no reader ever forgets. In some remote corner of the universe, poured out and glittering in innumerable solar systems, there once was a star on which clever animals invented knowledge. That was the most arrogant and mendacious minute of world history, yet only a minute. After nature had drawn a few breaths, the star grew cold, and the clever animals had to die. One might invent such a fable, and yet he still would not have illustrated sufficiently how miserable, how shadowy and flighty, how aimless and arbitrary the human intellect appears within nature. Then he continued without mercy, this human intellect, which sees itself as the axis and reference point of the universe, is no different from the fly buzzing through the air, convinced it is the center of the flying world. Everything in nature, however small and lowly, needs only a single breath from this swollen intellect to see itself as the pivot of all things. The intellect is no cosmic gift. It is a tool of survival invented by a weak creature that found itself without horns to defend itself and without jaws to tear its enemy apart. The intellect is the weapon of the unarmed, and everything the intellect has built from it, truths, systems, moralities, religions, is nothing more than an elaborate mask the weak wear to appear greater than they are. Illusion, evasion, lying, deception. These are the intellect's true tools, tools that build not knowledge but protection, tools that do not uncover truth but manufacture a bearable reality. And when Nietzsche closed his book and looked up at the sky through the window of his dim room, there was no sorrow in his eyes, no despair. There was something else, something closer to the ecstasy of a man seeing the world naked for the first time, stripped of masks of promises, of another world of illusions, about some absolute truth. The world, this world with its cruelty and its beauty and its impermanence, was all there was. And this, for Nietzsche, was no tragedy. It was an invitation. an invitation for man to stand in the middle of this one life he possesses and not cast his gaze toward an empty sky, nor hang his soul on a promise that will never arrive, but instead to embrace this moment, this very moment, and dance, yes, dance. Because true philosophy for Nietzsche was never a science, nor a system, nor a book. It was a celebration. It was a poem the living being writes with its body, not its pen with its footsteps, not its arguments. And in that dim room, while the world outside prepared to turn his words into banners, into battles, into new masks, Nietzsche wrote the last thing he would ever write before falling silent forever. "Let us dance, then." And he put out the lamp.